Thank you for joining me today at A Touch of Blue Studio with Drawing with Grandma. I'm glad you're here in my studio again today. I am going to show a demonstration of another oil glazing project. You can see my subject are these two pears. One of my students took this beautiful photo of these pears, so I am developing them in a monochromatic painting approach, which is just grays and blues mixed together with white to create the value range. So I'm developing the form, and then I will let this little monochromatic painting dry before I begin to apply the oil transparent glazes. So the painting is dry now, and I've tried to develop the light source reference so that you can see that the light is coming from the left and casting shadows on the right. I'm going to start with a diluted yellow-green. It's cadmium yellow with a touch of blue in it in order to create a nice yellow-green, and I will begin a wash over the pears that have the most intense and saturated yellows and greens in them. Because the paint is transparent, I've diluted it with linseed oil so you can see through it, and the monochromatic painting underneath that has developed the shades and the form will be revealed through it. So it's like using oil paint as if we were using it like watercolor. It's one of my favorite approaches to developing an oil painting study. I don't always do this with my large paintings, but I love to do it in these small studies. So I've developed the wash of the yellow-green, and now I'm going to begin taking in some sap green, which will blend right into that first layer of wash. And I have to be careful where I place it because I don't want to just cover up the whole painting. I need to keep it transparent so that the underpainting shows and some of that bright yellow is kept saturated and more intense. And I don't want to just make it all a muddy mess. So I want to be strategic and careful. I don't need to overdo. And then now I'm taking the complementary color of green, which is a red, and it's more of a reddish brown. It's burnt sienna. And it just gives that beautiful contrast to green. And you do see that in the pears. It's like a brown tone that is present within even green pears. And it's just a beautiful addition to the shadowed areas and the darker patches of this particular fruit. So I let it bleed right into the other colors. I don't want to overdo the application, but there's some areas that are more intense and darker than others. So you can see that there's intense light, and I want to make sure I'm accentuating the light highlights. And so sometimes you want to go in with a dark value against those lights in order to make the lights more intense. So now I'm going with a deep dark green and more intense blue shadowed areas for the darkest areas of the pears. And you don't want to be afraid to go too dark, but you don't want to use black if necessary, because black is a color that, although it's so helpful, it does desaturate your intense colors. And so there's other ways to get dark values without going right away to black. So this is like a deep ultramarine blue with Payne's gray and the burnt sienna or burnt umber. Those are two browns. So mixed together, they create a very dark value. And then in areas where I need more intense green again, then I go ahead and add my sap green. A little bit on those stems. I think I'll have to wait until this layer is dry before I do the detail on the stems, but I can lay in the foundation of those colors. Now I want to work on the background a bit while the pears dry. And so I'm taking ultramarine blue into the shadows and Payne's gray, and I'm just washing over the more and deeper values in that crease there in between the pears. And I want to make sure that separation between the pears is very clear, and that the cast shadow looks like that one pear is sitting on top of that fold. We're going to do a little bit more on the darks of the pears, and then I'm going to move into the background just to give you a little hint of what that is going to look like. A little more reddish brown, a little more color. Now I'm going with the lightest lights, and I'm going to accentuate little highlights where the light source will be hitting strongest on the fruit, and that will help it just come to life and just to intensify the brightest part of that yellow. So I'm going to let some of the light that's already on my brush, I'm just going to take it a few strategic places, let it bleed right into the wet color, and then try not to overdo, but still working on the edges that have reflected light on it while maintaining that beautiful shadow on the right sides of the fruit. The top of this pear on the left really needs to be a highlight because that is where the light is hitting first, and it draws our attention down to the second pear. So I need that left side of the left pear to be very just beautiful and have the light just be strategic in order for it to look natural and round and formed while keeping the colors rich and pure. Just a little bit more, then I think we'll have to let it dry before we do any final details and touches. Okay, we are getting close, and I think I'm going to work now on the shadows. And so, as I mentioned, I'm using Payne's gray and ultramarine blue into those creases to just have them stand out a bit and to saturate the shadows a little bit. It needs to come right against that pear on the right, and then I want to have a little bit on this fold right behind because that blue against that green is just so beautiful. And we're not going to overdo right now. I just wanted to show you what this blue in the background could do in order to intensify the beauty of those colors in the pear. I may come back and do a wash of violet into that blue, but I will need to wait until this layer is dry, and then I will come back. Just a little bit of color on the cloth so that the edges that are folded will look like they are placed in the light. So I think this will do for the first layer, and I will try to put an image of the final painting up on my website. You're welcome to go there and observe it and see what I've done with the final touches. Just a few more highlights. And this color is not pure white. It might look to you like it's pure white, but it has a little bit of color in to make sure I'm matching the fruit, but it also has a little blue in there because the light would be reflecting the blue of the cloth too, and we want to reveal a little cool light. A few more touches, and here is the finished study in oil with a monochromatic painting with oil wash. Thank you so much for joining me today at A Touch of Blue Studio with Drawing and Painting with Grandma.